It's easy to look around and notice everything wrong in your city. In this podcast by Every Neighborhood Partnership, join Grace and Andrew as they invite friends, activists, pastors, leaders, and city workers to discover what's good in the neighborhood. Join us for insightful conversations that will encourage you to see your city and its people in a new way. Hey, you're listening to What's Good in the Neighborhood. Today, we're still in our drive tour series, and we're talking with our friend, Marcel Woodruff. Marcel is a jack of all trades here in our city, in Southwest Fresno specifically, and we talked to him about what it looks like to develop the next generation of leaders here in our city. Marcel gives us a new imagination, a broader imagination for what it looks like when we talk about thriving and flourishing. You will not want to miss this one as he talks to us about how conversations create culture. Stick with us.
Well, welcome to What's Good in the Neighborhood. My name is Andrew File.
I'm Grace.
And we are here with my friend Marcel. Welcome, Marcel.
I'm glad to be here.
Good to have you. As we're going through this series, what we're doing now is we've launched our drive tour. So one, I hope you have downloaded the drive tour. Go to Voice Map, download it, search Fresno, you'll find it. But what we wanted to do is take a moment to pause and kind of let you introduce some of the speakers on the tour. You know, their pieces are, a minute to 5 minutes at most. And so you wanted just to get their heart. What do they do? What motivates them? What kind of work are they hoping to expose you to? And obviously, they're doing a ton of other things. And so how can you follow and learn more? So Marcel, we're glad to have you here. You are a man of many talents. So I put on here, as I was thinking about it, I'm like, this guy knows coding. He's a professor, father, studio producer. I am sure the list goes on and on and on and on, because I think you're a person that follows your passion. And so, how have you found yourself doing the things you're doing? What drives you? Who's Marcel? What drives you?
What drives me? I don't know. I think that it's probably the people and relationships. I think that you look at all these things. So my big goal in life was to be a video game programmer. That was it. That's all I wanted to do. And so I became a coder. But then I wanted to give back to the community, so I wanted to teach the kids how to code, but the kids wanted to do studio work. So I'm okay, let me go and figure out how to do studio work then. And so as I've grown and learned and walked with community, a lot of the skills I've developed, or even passions I've developed, have really just been in relationship with community to say, okay, I'll come alongside you and we can learn this together. Yeah. And then I became a man of many talents.
That's how you do it. So tell me about, what kind of, even just for folks that don't maybe have context to you, what kind of labels? I always never know what org or how to place you, because you're also a guy that works with a lot of partners. You've always been very collaborative. And so, what are some of the things you spend your time doing these days?
I spent a lot of time with the Community Justice Network, and so the Drive Initiative, they have the 14 initiatives, and one of them was around the Community Justice Network, which is a coalition or collaboration of a bunch of social justice orgs who are coming together and thinking about how do we impact Fresno's most vulnerable populations in a way that not siloed, but works together. And so I'm sort of maybe the convener of that thing, and so I do a lot of that. A lot of the work I do is also around advanced peace. We organized for many years to get Advanced Peace, which is the gun violence reduction program, to Fresno. And when we won, I couldn't just walk away from it. But so I still can support it there a lot, and a little bit with Faith in the Valley. And I have my own business, Cell Block Enterprises. That's why I teach the kids how to code, and I would do studio projects. And to be honest, a lot of the CBOs borrow what I'm doing at Cell Block Enterprises and say they did it at the CBO. But it works out for everybody.
Yeah. Okay. So that is, as I said, this is a man of many talents and passions. So you can see that on display. One thing though that you've already said is community has moved you. Is it a leadership? You're trying to develop leaders? What is the things that you've gone after? I see youth, trying to give people opportunity. What is the thing that resonates in that of community? You said it as community, but what are you hoping to imagine for them, open for them?
Yeah, really at my core, I'm Jack Community Trades, right? So, but I think at the core, it's all really about public health. I want to see communities healthy. I want to see people healthy. And for me, that's more than just not being sick. It's about being able to thrive, being able to imagine, and being able to actually exercise things that you want to see done in the world and in life. And so, what tends to happen is people come to me with ideas or dreams, and I'm the kind of guy that's really like pragmatic or practical. And so, look, I'll start you on this, but you got to lead the way, the rest of the way, and I'll follow and support. And I think that's how a lot of leaders that I've worked with emerge, and that they'll come to me with a dream. And I don't know, my computer science programmer brain says, okay, this is how you get this thing done. And I'll come alongside people, and they'll move on, and I'll continue to just work with community and relationship.
I hear in that there's a lot of people with a lot of ideas, right? We love to dream. We love to think of like the next new solution or thing. It's another thing to like, hear you go, okay, that sounds awesome. Here's how you do that and keep going. So what does that look like for you, like on the ground, as you see someone, you see the potential, you see where it could go? What does that support actually look like?
A lot of times it looks like logistics. Like, for example, we started with Saturday sports. And so we have these young kids who are coming out there. And I think we were there about 3 years. And so you start at 10, now you're 13. And you're looking at Marcel like, hey, I think I'm a little bit too big to kick a kickball now. What else you got for me? And I was like, I don't know, what do you want? And they said, a studio. And well, I don't know. And so it looks like me doing a little bit of leg work. So I went out and I talked to like Ed Cashmerick at YFC and Phil Sky, and began to like do the networking piece.
Right.
And say, okay, well, I got the location, I've got some equipment. I need you to meet these people now. And so now here's the handshake, here's the relational piece. Well, now they who have the capacity to help your dream move forward, and you got to know them. And then, well, what's the next step? Well, you got to contracts, or you don't have to do contracts out there. So I think I do a lot of leg work and networking. And then when it gets to a point in time where community members or people are equipped to hold the space for themselves, I'll back up and say, all right, just let me know how you need me to support you moving forward.
So that's a perfect example. I know on the drive tour, we stop at Edison, right? And then you talk about Kieshaun. So kind of walk that same journey. Like, how did you meet him? How did this like clean air project happen? Like, what's he doing now?
Interesting. So Kieshaun, there's a story that Kieshaun tells and a story that Marcel tells. So I'm gonna tell the story that Marcel tells. Like, I have my own.
And we'll get Kieshaun on to
anything. Yeah. So he can. So my story with Kieshaun was I started working with Kieshaun actually at the music studio at Youth for Christ. And first, his twin brother Keon was the one most interested in it. But then Kieshaun would come and hang out, but eat the tacos, because like food is a big part of community. You want to build community, keep food at the center of it. And so he would come eat the tacos, but he wasn't really too engaged. Tragically, about maybe a year after meeting them, they lost their older brother to a homicide, like a really tragic situation. And Kieshaun, understandably, and his trauma he became really despondent. And so over the course of the year, he kind of stopped going to school, and things like that would happen. And so I had a conversation with Kieshaun, like, okay, Kieshaun, like, if you don't want to go to school, I get it, but you gotta live somehow. So what are we gonna do here? And he said, I don't know. And I said, I can teach you how to code. And so he starts coming with me to Cell Block Enterprises, learn how to code. And he develops like a little appetite for developing apps and codes and websites. And then we get our first contract, and he makes some money with it. So now he's excited. And so, but as he was going back to Southwest Fresno Enterprise with me, he was starting to go back to school. And so he gets back in school, and I'm like, okay, well.
And are you pushing him to go back to school?
It happened naturally. He had something to buy into, and I'm kind of like, so I went to the seminary, so I got a little bit of counseling in me, so I can bless you a little bit with some therapy, and so not too much though. I give you a little bit of love, and so he just naturally kind of gravitates back to it. He doesn't ends up graduating, but he naturally kind of went to a point in time where like he had this arc of healing, and he says, I want to do something to empower my community. And so the way the healthy air thing kind of came about really was when his brother passed away. The first response from the police officers was he in a gang? And that kind of it hurt Keon and Kieshaun because he wasn't, but it kind of felt like there was like this move to justify it. And so Kieshaun says, I have to show that the reality that we live in is bigger than just our individual decisions, that there's some context around us. Something is happening at a communal or a civic level that's impacting us. And so He says, I'm gonna get a drone, I'm gonna put an air quality monitor on it, I'm gonna fly it up higher than we can actually have the capacity to impact, because only the factories in the area, they can impact that, right? So that was how it emerged. I need to demonstrate something that is beyond us, that is impacting us. And so he builds out his project. He does like a really amazing job with it the first year, starts getting a whole bunch of other grants, and that's how he emerged as a leader that he became today.
Yeah. That's amazing. And you mentioned he just got some sort of grant to continue to drive the project forward.
Yeah, he did. So I'm not sure if I can announce it yet, but he did.
this isn't coming out for a couple months. Yeah.
So he did. So his project was just awarded some finances by the Irvine Foundation to build out into a co-op. And so the same thing that I did with Kieshaun can now do with other young people to build their own business. And so we're talking about generational wealth, imagination, like we talked about earlier, and healing. And so he has a capacity now alongside of myself and other leaders to build something that'll have this thing here for the rest of Fresno's life. So
it's awesome. I think two things I want to go a little deeper on, because I think like one thing I want to get to eventually is like when I need to reimagine stuff, I think of you, because you have a way of like seeing space differently and seeing what's kind of under it. But like first, some of our folks don't know like the systemic brokenness that kind of pervades. What do you think are things that like keep our neighborhoods trapped? Like from the leaders that are talking about our city, from like broken systems or policies, like what are some of the things that really like just drive you crazy, or things that you're, you mentioned safety, right? So that could be one, but what are things you're trying to overturn that are holding our community back?
Oh man. So can I give you like $100 word a couple of times?
Yeah,
like a couple $100.
This is professor time.
Professor time?
Yeah.
I think at a core level of it, for me, as I think about it and I imagine things, I think a lot of what we're beholding to are these certain mental models that are designed to, or they normalize the displacement or the disposal of people, right? So when you think about like developing leaders in the community, oftentimes that leadership development has to go at the speed of corporation or the speed of institution or the speed of government instead of the speed of community. And so we have a million times where, not a million times, but I can be hyperbolic. Yeah. A million times, right? Where like you have a wonderful leader in the community, and this happened recently where her son had a 5150, so she has a family crisis, and so you're going to miss a couple of meetings and so on and so forth. And historically, we're designed to like, well, maybe we'll catch you in the next go around. But what does it mean for us to be flexible, to recenter, and to come back and say, what does it mean to hold you in this moment, right? And what we call a cosmopolitan ethos, right? With this space where everybody belongs, and we're only going to go as fast as the slowest person needs us to go. And so I think in doing that, it does call you back to recenter and reprioritize in ways that says like, no, everybody matters. And so and as we kind of are wrestling with how to keep you in this space, I think I'm going to have to require or rely on you to lead me on how to keep you in this space, because nobody knows your life better than you do. And so like in that space, you become the leader that says, Marcel, this is what I need, this is what we need, and it's my job to go do that legwork to make sure that I keep you in this work. And so
It sounds like going at the pace of loving someone.
I think so. Yeah, deliberate, it's intentional. Yeah. And so when you look at like the history of things around like redlining, like where these spaces have been historically divested in, or
we're not assuming anything here. So what's redlining? Right. I don't know if some folks listening know, but some don't. What's redlining? And I mean, what does that mean even in our Fresno context?
What does that mean in Fresno context? So redlining in Fresno's context really looks at South Fresno, Southwest, Southeast, and it looks at decisions made by government and by stakeholders to intentionally divest in certain areas. So those areas never had the infrastructure to evolve and grow and thrive. And so like in Fresno, the development of the 99 freeway is a really big moment where you have not only like a theoretical red line where we, like somebody in some little secret room is creating a map that says you're not going to invest in this, but you have an actual physical red line that separates Fresno from its east part to its west part. And at that point in time, the African American community in their first generation of migrants, African American community in Southwest Fresno, they were able to build wealth. And what currently is the 99 corridor was the Black business district. And so they got pushed west, and they lost homes, lost housing, and lost businesses in a way that we never really recovered. And so when we speak about like the histories of things, we're talking about these past acts that have really divested and damaged communities, and bringing people into bear to understand what had happened and to help them imagine how do we move forward and heal and begin to thrive again.
Yeah, real intentional decisions. I mean, and this is not just a Fresno story, right? This is a national story of where like the highway administration decided it's no joke that they intentionally put these highways in certain neighborhoods across the whole United States, right? So there's books, documentaries about this if you want to go deeper. What do you think, going back to mental models, and you mentioned displace or dispose of, what do you think, what are ways that we're still doing that to people in all of Fresno, all of our communities, but like how do you specifically see that from youth you're working with? Or
Yeah, I think it's at a, like, we practice it at like a cosmological level, like it's just in our worldview. And so like even like if you think about the way that schools are designed, they were designed kind of like during the Industrial Revolution. And so like in industry and in pipelining, there's always waste. And so we're kind of always navigating like, what moves forward and what gets disposed of and what's waste. And so when you're in school and little Johnny can't stop throwing pencils, or little Johnny can't keep quiet, our response isn't to figure out a way to help little Johnny belong in more meaningful ways. Response is to displace little Johnny. You go to the principal's office, or you get suspended, and that's how we solve problems.
Or alternative school.
Alternative schools, right? Yeah. And so we've learned to solve problems by disappearing things and disappearing peoples. And so and that holds a mental model for all of us in terms of like what is safety. So safety looks like the disappearing of other people, right? And so beginning to interrogate like that mental model and say, well, I think safety for me is about radical belonging of all people. I feel the safest when everybody in space really belongs and is welcome. And so how do we begin to think and imagine and build infrastructures that really embrace radical belonging?
You all see why I love Marcel. I think it's a creative imagination, a way of rethinking. Like you said, it's not just a idea. It's like a whole way of seeing our community and the way our systems are built. Like how have you done this interrogation work? How do you grow in your ability to see? How do we need to grow in our ability to see?
I've been blessed. I think that I've had like great leaders, man. To give them a shout out, like Phil Sky really kind of catalyzed me in this work, and so like I give like a lot of credit to Phil. He and I used to sit and I would have conversations. So one thing, have conversations with people. I talk. Conversation creates culture, and so. And so we had, like Phil and I used to talk all the time when you were at FIFO, and it would stimulate imaginations. And then he began to connect me. Okay, here's a training, here's a training, here's a training, here's a training. And then I began to move into just different practices where I would say, hey, you know what? That training was good, but it doesn't really meet the needs of this group, But now I have the opportunity to figure out what does, and to work with the group to figure out what does as well. And I think that's how a lot of my journey has been. People really invested in me, people discipled me, and I was able to get the tools necessary to interrogate that level of discipleship. I mean, we're like in this big deconstruction kind of movement now. I was able to be empowered and given permission to deconstruct things, and then work alongside community to say, okay, well, what are we going to build in its place? And
I really love that you shout out Phil, and it's like, thank you so much. Like, you totally sat with me, you discipled me. And yet there were some trainings where it's like, we're missing the mark. We're missing a group of people. I think that alone is like a bravery to go, hey, like, I loved that, but you're missing a whole group of people that are outside of that narrative. Talk to us about using your voice to like not only develop other leaders that like are about the work that you're about, but also to like stand up for like, hey, this isn't, it's kind of right. You're about 80% there, but that next 20, that next 10%, like, and really standing in the gap and advocating for that. Talk to us about like what that looks like on the ground for you to like just be like, not like good, but it could be better.
It used to be harder. So I think you're talking about like these courageous conversations that have to happen around transformation. And so with somebody like Phil, like I love Phil. Phil loves me. It's like, and it's just open. Like, hey, Phil, I disagree. But what happens when you may be talking to somebody who is in opposition to you, who you don't know real well, and there's a certain level of othering that presides. This thing isn't going to go forward. A lot of what I've done is just develop like different frameworks and to identify like, okay, how do I communicate to you or with you in a way that doesn't other you, but still is really maintains the integrity that I have about this particular issue, right? And so a lot of what we've been using recently is like nonviolent communications. Have you read the book Nonviolent Communications? So it's about deploying and employing a particular type of language that's anti-othering and invitational, but still stands, it's like as the kids say, stands on business, right? It's still, it's still about.
I don't know what the kids say. I'm too old.
Oh man,
Stands on business.
Stand on business. You gotta get on. You have it on TikTok. Get on your TikTok, man. I think
Apparently it's going to get banned.
today, huh? I think they're voting it.
Yeah, literally today.
They're time marking ourselves.
They're voting it. Yeah, I know. But I think it's that. I think so. I really saw my faith is at the core of my journey, right? And so I really do believe in solidarity with the poor, solidarity with those who have been deemed other. And so me being compassionate with those who may not see the world the way I see it, but I have faith that they have the capacity to see the world in a more radical and redemptive and holistic way. And so I'll invest in that faith that I have in them to see the world differently, as opposed to withdrawing to this space of myself that says, this person will never get it.
Yes. Yeah. Wow, we could go on a whole rant on that one.
And I've seen you do that. One of the spaces we've shared is around conversations in Southwest around safety, right? And so when people use the word safety, and this is like the framework I came from, the first thing that means is police presence. So greater safety in a neighborhood means more police. And just gentle, like loving, reorienting words that you've given to say, hey, actually, like, what if neighbors felt safe together? And that's like what we recenter that word and change the conversation. And folks go, oh yeah, that's good. That's really good. But it's in a way that you're challenging the presumption of what safety means, reorienting everyone in the room, but also pushing like, no, this is like, that version of safety is antithetical to like real safety is,
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you observed that. Thank you. You actually listened to me.
Yeah, it's good.
Yes.
I try.
Yep.
So you think about Southwest, that obviously the tour, just going back to like our drive tour, the tour piece is of driving along California Avenue. People have their own presumption. We're hoping to show some, signs of pain, but also some signs of hope in Southwest. What is giving you hope of what's like happening in Southwest Fresno? People, places, organizations, like what drives your kind of hope for change in that area?
Southwest has always been beautiful to me, and I think it's been beautiful in ways that aren't conventional, like just in the relationships between people. How I know one thing that residents of Southwest Fresno might say is that everybody from the West Side knows everybody from the West Side, right? Totally. And so it's like these organic relationships. So I think the opportunity to lift up like the beauty and the compassion and just the everyday care that happens between neighbors excites me, and I want to be able to tell those stories. And I'm optimistic about the community beginning to advocate for itself, or being equipped to advocate for itself in a way where like genuine transformation happens. So I'm happy that they have the new City College district over there, City College over there. I'm glad that there's talks about like brick and mortar stuff, but I think if it stays community led, it inspires me, and I want to continue pushing forward for community to have what they want to have.
Well, and folks that don't know, one of the things to that is the city did a general plan update, said less commercial and industrial stuff going on in the neighborhood. The city's violated that time and time again, but residents keep rising up and saying, no, like that cannot happen. Is that the kind of stuff you're saying, or like
it is. I mean, because even like the capacity to recapture or to stimulate their imagination in Southwest residents. So a lot of times what we hear in working with on the West Side is we want what they have, and let's say that's great. You should have what they have. But if you were to imagine that in your own cultural contextual like context, and what does it really mean to have like, instead of what they might have at River Park, but to have like African drum spaces here, like what does that mean for you? And so to allow people to invite them back into who they really are and imagine out of that space. And I think that's what's happening right now. I like the new 9706 mural that Dakari kind of led. It was a native of West Fresno. I like how that's emerging. And we know that there's more needed, but I like that there's a morale and a hope in the community that says, no, we believe these things can happen. We should keep pushing for them.
Because then it centers who you are and your culture, and not like, it's almost like a false sense of security to have another River Park in Southwest Fresno. Like, it sounds good, But is it good for all people? Like, would that be a real flourishing, or would it like real flourishing be like we get to celebrate who we are, our community, our people, food,
Right.
green space for we just get to be together. I really love that. I think that's really special that to like reach, like even reframe that of like, what's beyond, yes, that thing looks good, but what's even better than that beyond? It's really cool. Mm-hmm.
It's the core question of like, who are we really? How do we show that?
So you've been in this work a bit, a couple years. So I think, I imagine for this podcast, we're going to have a lot of leaders, folks that have been at this a little bit, and then folks that want to stay involved in our city for a long haul. What do you do to take care of yourself? Like, what have you, obviously that's a journey itself to learn that, but what are some of the things that you'd recommend, some of the things that have been life-giving for you? Because you stay close to pain, you stay close to stories of, even as you stated, violence. And so you don't numb yourself, you don't just tune out, but you have to do stuff to also take care of yourself. So how have you done that?
That's all right. I don't do it perfectly, so if anybody has any advice, write in and give me some more. But I think initially it was more of an intellectual exercise, so just developing frameworks and reading as much as I could. Because that kind of sustains me to figure out how do I process this in a cerebral way at first. That helps me just organize it in my mind. And then I realized that wasn't enough. And so I just started like doing therapeutic stuff, like going to therapy, community therapy, counseling therapies, healing circles, going with like our brothers from like FBU and doing like the sweat lodges and stuff like that, doing stuff with body. And now I do a lot of somatic healing. And so somatics really kind of takes in consideration the whole body, the mind, the heart, and the gut, and that the body can store trauma, the body can store grief, and learning how to listen to your body. And so I do that like with the African drum. So we do like the African drumming in Southwest Fresno every other weekend at Frank H. And when you're moving your body to rhythm and to in an emotion, it's a release. And so I do the intellectual exercise, the community stuff, the individual therapy when I need it, but mainly it's just a practice of somatics where I just listen to my mind, my heart, and my body and let it guide me.
That's a long journey to, I think they say like long journey from here to here, it's like connecting yourself. We just even talk about mental models, right? We just have that Western framework of like mind, body, and spirit are just disconnected. It's like, it's never been, but that's how we have it.
Because a lot of our modalities are all neck up. And so like, what does it mean to, because you get more, like your gut and your body send more information to your mind and then vice versa. So I learn how to listen to that and be aware of that.
So good.
See, this is why I like hanging out with this guy.
Yeah, Marcel, it was really sweet to get time with you. I'm interested in like how we can continue to support you, follow your journey, join in what you're doing in Southwest Fresno. Like, what's some easy, maybe not easy, but some on-ramps for people to get involved with what you're doing?
We're going to launch our CJN website very soon. So when that website launches, get connected. It'll have a series of events and ways to onboard into the work will be there. Right now, we're doing a lot around our community mediators in Southwest. And so we're thinking through, public safety. And so like we say, community has everything it needs. You've got to just polish it a little bit. And so we have these mediator trainings where we're teaching people about restorative justice, about how to be present and see conflict as something generative, not always negative. And so just reframing how we see conflict in the world and how we intervene. And so they can get on board with our mediators training and just whatever else is on the website that we say is going on. Just go ahead and pull up.
That's awesome.
Well, thanks for the time, man. Always a pleasure. And again, for you, giving time to show us around Southwest on the tour is awesome. I think it's best seen from the eyes of folks that love it, live it, understand it. So thanks for the time there, too.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in. If you want to find out more about EMP, you can visit us at everyneighborhood.org or follow us at EMP Fresno. Every Neighborhood Partnership and this podcast exists to activate, equip, mobilize, and transform here in Fresno and beyond. If you like what you've heard, please share and review what's good in the neighborhood wherever you listen. We'll see you next time.